budget that I sent you or not yet?
No,
So don't look at it. What I'll do is you can have to download the Excel sheets with all the info.
Always these areas that is there for eligible.
Ready? Okay, good evening, everybody. Welcome, Township, Pemberton Township regular meeting agenda, March 19th, 2025. I'm going to make the public statement pursuant to the requirements of the Open Public Meetings Act. Adequate notice of this meeting has been published in the Burlington County Times and Trenton Times on the 5th day of January, 2025. Additionally posted on the official bulletin board of the Township of Pemberton on the first day of January 2025. Those wishing to be notified of changes to scheduled meetings were notified via email or regular mail. Would everybody please stand and honor the flag, please? Pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, thank you. Can we do roll call, please?
Mr. Dewey?
Here.
Mr. Harper?
Here.
Mr. Bianchini?
Here.
Mr. Doyle?
Here.
Mr. Ward?
Here. And this meeting is now officially called to order. And first item up on the agenda this evening is a presentation on affordable housing by our township planner, Mr. Mark Remsa. Mr. Remsa, you got the floor, sir.
okay, thank you. Good evening, council members and members of the public. I'm here to give you an overview of the affordable housing obligation that all towns in New Jersey have. I have a little bit of background about affordable housing. Why is there affordable housing obligation in New Jersey? Well, back in 1975, there was a New Jersey Supreme Court decision that said all towns have an obligation to provide their fair share of affordable housing. In 1985, the state legislature put into law the Fair Housing Act, which puts the meat to the case from normally called the Mount Laurel decision. And then just last year, the housing law was updated. And so there are a new set of numbers that all municipalities have to address. So why even address your affordable housing obligation? Well, because the law has built into it something called the builder's remedy lawsuit. And so that gives developers the ability to sue towns that haven't passed their affordable housing plans and put them into effect. Municipalities want to avoid that lawsuit because in the end, municipalities lose basically their ability to zone where they want to put affordable housing. And so instead of you deciding, the developer decides. So that's a little bit of the stick that's built into the law.
Mark, could you hold on one second for
Sure.
me, please? Mrs. Foreman? I'm sorry, yeah, ADA rules and regulations, I have to have 36-inch space for fire rules and regulations, please. Thank you, ma'am. Sorry, it was about.
That's okay, that's okay.
Go ahead, Mr. Remsa.
Sure. So, what is affordable housing? There's a lot of jargon in the law. It talks about low and moderate income households. So what I did was try to give you a little bit of an example of what it is. So Pemberton Township's in housing region number 5. So housing region number 5 consists of Burlington County, Camden County, and Gloucester County. And in that housing region, they use the median household income, and households adjusted by size. So if it's a one-person household, the median income is lower. Four-person household, which I'm going to use in my example, is different. And then, of course, those household numbers change for one person, two-person, three-person, four, and so forth. But I just wanted to give an example for the 2024 income limits. And that's for a 4-member household in housing region number 5. So the median household income is $114,700 a year. That's the annual household income. Moderate, for that four-member household, is $760. Low income, for that same four-member household, would be $57,350. And the other category is very low income. So that would be $34,410. So that gives you an idea. The moderate income household, that could be a teacher, postman, a janitor, could be a person working in a warehouse and a spouse. So that's the idea of the need for the affordable housing. So what's your obligation? What's the obligation in Pemberton Township? Well, there's two pieces to it. One's, again, jargon. It's called present need. Present need is essentially the existing homes that are estimated to be occupied by low and moderate income households that have some kind of housing issue that needs to be rehabilitated. And this is all based on the U.S. Census data, and the state calculates this. So your number is 79. So they're saying there are 79 existing household and housing units that need to be rehabilitated. And you may know about this because you have a rehabilitation program in town to help residents that are income qualified. And then there's prospective need. That's the need that going forward. And they calculate that by estimating future growth in the housing region. And your fair share of that big number is 79. So don't be confused because the numbers are the same, 79 and 79. 79 for existing households that need to have their houses fixed up, and then there's 79 looking toward the future. So in this case, this is the first time Pemberton Township has had a number. In the past, you haven't had an affordable housing obligation number for prospective need. And that's because you used to be a urban aid municipality. And you're no longer. So urban aid municipalities got a pass by the state to have a prospective need. They did, of course, have a rehab need or that present need. So how do municipalities typically address their affordable housing obligation? Well, one is they put together a rehab program, which you already have in place. So you would continue using your rehab program for the present need number. The prospective need number, though, there's a whole host of different ways that municipalities address that number. And most of them do it by creating new zoning. A new zoning where they would require market rate housing and a certain set aside for affordable housing. And the way the numbers work in the law, if you have rental housing, 15% of the total number of units have to be set aside for affordable. If it's for sale, the state says you got to put 20% set aside. Other municipalities that have difficulty zoning, sometimes what they'll do is they'll use their housing trust fund. It's monies that developers pay into a fund. You have a fund in town. Every time a housing development comes in and develops, has to pay a percentage of their assessed value. Non-residential, same thing. They have to pay that. So what often happens is municipalities will use some of that money and they'll help to convert market rate housing into affordable housing. That works for some towns. It's not so efficient because it eats up a lot of the money that you have, especially the money that you need to set aside for your rehab program. And in other cases, some towns do 100% affordable housing, which is at the under end of the spectrum. No market rate housing's built, but they will normally partner up with a affordable housing developer who specializes in that and builds all of the units as affordable. That could be very expensive, though. So most towns do the zoning avenue. So how would Pemberton address its affordable housing obligation? Well, as I said, your present need, you already have a rehab program, very successful, and you'll probably continue that program. But for the prospective need, Pemberton's in a very unique situation where you don't have to zone, you don't have to really do anything because you already have in place some affordable housing developments that were done years ago, and you're going to get credit for those that you did, that were built and operational now. And that one is Browns Woods Apartments. And there are 60 affordable housing units in that are restricted for only affordable housing. So that's already 60 in place. And you happen to have a redevelopment plan for the Greenberg Farm, and that's 40 age-restricted housing. So the law says you can only use 25% of your affordable housing number up to, for age-restricted affordable housing. But at the end of the day, you're going to get 24 out of Greenberg today, plus there's bonus credits, which, there's a calculation in there. So you're going to get 26 from Greenberg. And then from Browns Woods, you're going to get 60. So you're already at 86. So you already exceed your 79, and you're going to be able to bank into the future, for future rounds, that excess, that surplus that you have. So really, you don't have to do anything other than putting together your housing plan and identify Browns Woods and the Greenberg Farm in your plan. Now, of course, there's some other parts we have to do in the plan, but I wanted to tell you that Pemberton's in a unique position where you don't have to go and do any more zoning or anything like that to create more housing. You already have it in place. So you have some other developments in town, like Golden Terrace, Pineland Field 1, and Pinefield 2. Those are age-restricted, so really, you'll be able to most likely use them as surplus for future rounds, because you already hit your max on the affordable housing for age-restricted right now, which is 24. So at the end of the day, this has to be accomplished by the planning board. Has to adopt this plan by June of 30th of this year. And then what you do is you would file that plan with the state and the courts. So there's some additional steps that have to take place. So it's a housing plan, element and fair share plan. That's the plan I was just talking about. Then we also have to prepare a spending plan. You collect money from developers, so there's requirements of putting together a spending plan of how that's going to be spent. You have to have a rehab program manual, which I'm working with Rosemary and finalizing that. You also have to affordability assistance manual, and you have to have a marketing manual put in place as well. So those are the next items, all in the works. So the planning board holds a public hearing on the housing plan element. It adopts it by resolution, comes to council. Council also adopts a resolution endorsing it and approving it. And then all that gets packaged up by Jerry, and he sends it off to the courts and to the state. So that's, in a nutshell, where we are with Pemberton Township and dealing with the affordable housing law.
Okay.
I certainly welcome any questions. I did give you in my handout the 2024 income levels for all the different size households, if you wanted to see what they were like.
Cool.
Council President, could I just
Sure, Councilman Dewey.
Mark, I can't say that I've been here all my life because I'm still alive, but I've been here for over 70 years.
Yes.
Okay. And back in the late 70s, T&M Homes came in town, and they built maybe over 1,000 homes. Now, had Pinelands been established when they came in town, half the houses wouldn't have been built where they were built. Wetlands and all that. Then in the 80s, Farm Home came in town, and they built over 1,000 homes. And you know what farm homes are, correct? Mm-hmm. And then over the years, they took money from Mount Laurel, they took money from Morristown, because they didn't want the low-income houses, and the township, I guess, took, I don't know how it worked out.
Yeah, that was the regional contribution agreements, right? Yeah,
Right?
yeah.
So you didn't mention Sunbury Village, which is probably 80% rentals, which was built in about 1955. It was for the retired officers and GIs that came back from Second World War. In the place, there's a lot of great people in there, but it's really run down, right? So why couldn't they take the people that own the houses and rehab their houses?
Oh, you could under the rehab
All
program.
right, so we have Brownswoods Apartments, would you say there's 60 people there? You've got Sunbury Village. We have low-income SSI across from the Country Lakes Shopping Center. Then I don't know how many buildings are on Junction Road that are low-income and SSI. I think there's, what, 4, 5, 6 buildings? How does that fit into our equation of what we need, where personally, I think we exceed the number?
We do. We do.
Yeah,
exceed
you
that.
do.
But I mean, really
Well-
exceed the number.
Well, the reason being is you have to have deed restrictions on the property. And of all those, the only one that has deed restriction is Brownswoods. So that's what the state is looking for. And all those other homes that you talk about, while it's true that probably low and moderate income households occupy them, because they're not deed restricted, you won't get credit for those.
Well, what do we got to do? See, when I first got elected, and Josh can verify it, there was 2 millionaires that owned maybe less than half of the houses in Sunbury. I'm talking about millionaires. And they got a ton of money to rehab their houses. And my feeling, and I made, it's on record, I said, why would you take millionaires and rehab their rentals where there's people on the back street that have nothing? Why didn't they get the help? And then, because we had to vote to write it off after, was it 10 years? I
Yeah,
mean, the
when you do
system-
the rehab, that's
The
correct, it's
system
10
is
years.
broke.
Well,
Yeah.
well, all I can tell you is I'm trying to help you with the current set of rules. And that we want to avoid any kind of lawsuit. You're in a position where you will avoid a lawsuit. Many of the homes that you described that need the rehab, they're going to be available, the monies are going to be available for you. And you've got two pots of money for that. You have the Housing Trust Fund, and there's also, I believe, a small cities program that you can also do the rehab from. So those folks who own those homes have to come in, be income verified, and then they have to agree to that 10-year restriction on their home. And they're eligible for that.
I just think that Pemberton Township is unique because we've already, the farm home, this home, where our numbers shouldn't even be 50, I don't think.
Well, the way it works is, there are 3 factors that go into the calculation. So they have that estimate for the future growth in the housing region. Then they look at 3 factors. They look at your ratio of your income to the housing region income. You're correct. It pulls you down. Then also your ratio of non-residential value in real estate to the region. Again, you don't have a lot of non-residential development, so that keeps you down. What you do have, even though they only calculate this outside of the Pinelands, you have a little bit of developable land, and it's only 200 acres is what they calculate, because I looked at the numbers. And so that pulls you up. And so your share came out to 79. But that's prospective, meaning future. So the way the rules are written, they don't look at what happened in the past. They're only looking at what's going forward, prospective in the future. But I agree, Pemberton's unique. It has the unique demographics in that regard.
Yeah.
Just hurts when you lose a warehouse or a housing development for a working farm to destroy it, to put 500 houses in on the west side of town.
Sure.
And what's it gonna generate for this side of town?
Yeah, well,
If you had your choice, would you make a left and go to John and Molly's, or come to Brown's Mills and get a pizza and a massage? You know?
well, all I can tell you is, we try to help you, to avoid, future lawsuits and protect yourself.
And Mr. Rebs, I know you have another municipality to get to this evening.
Yes.
So in lieu of that, I only have really one question, and maybe Rosemary can help me out with it, but I know we have that $1.5 million, or $1.4 million in that rehab fund.
Yeah.
That'll be made available when we
Well,
start.
it's 1.4 in your housing trust fund.
Housing Trust Fund, right? Will we, is it safe to assume we'll probably have a public meeting on that when we get that all figured out? There you go.
We definitely will.
Okay.
Generally speaking, Roe, do you know X number two?
We finished up the housing manual today, and I finished up the RFP that needs to go out for the contractors. We want to make sure that we hire local contractors within Pemberton. So with that being said, that'll all be on the first agenda in April. We want to roll the program out probably mid-April, at the end of April, latest.
All right. Perfect. And then whenever you said it's finished up, Roe, so we'll be able to get that over for Mark to peruse that probably sometime the end of this week or beginning of next week.
So I sent the entire Affordable Housing Committee the entire manual, as well as the RFP that I worked on today.
Perfect.
Excellent,
Thank you, ma'am.
excellent.
All right. Does any other council members have questions for Mr. Remsa? All right. I know you got a short drive, Mark, over to East Hampton. but-
I do. But it's not to John O'Malley's, so. Go to the municipal building. But I appreciate the comments and the sentiment. I do understand. All right, well, thank you for the opportunity to present this to you. Hopefully it's a little clearer, and hopefully the outline is also helpful. So thank you very much for the opportunity.
Absolutely.
And also getting me on first. I really appreciate it.
Not a problem. Thank you, sir.
All right,
Appreciate
have
the
a
time.
good evening.
You too. Okay, so with that being done, we'll move on. Next up on the agenda is closed session. Do we have anything for closed session tonight, Mr. Solicitor?
Couple things I promised to be quick.
Okay, so we need to need a motion to go into closed session. on
Make a motion
resolution.
for closed session?
Second.
Mr. Doyle?
Yes.
Mr. Harper?
Yes.
Mr. Bianchini?
Yes.
Mr. Dewey?
Yes.
Mr. Ward?
Yes. Okay, we'll be back as quick as we can, everybody. I'm sorry.